Ready?
Right.
Okay. Good. I'm used to saying good evening or good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to our public forum. My name is Matt Cornelis. I'm the town manager. First of all, are there any boards that need to call themselves to order here at this meeting? I don't see any quorums, but we always ask. Seeing none, I don't think there's any boards that need to be called to order. So thank you very much. We're going to have a PowerPoint presentation, which is behind Jenna up there. We're going to go through it fairly quickly so that we can have time for your questions and answers, which is really the most important part of the meeting. This is I think it's our fourth or fifth public forum. We had our third the other night, big forum, and we've had smaller ones as well. So this one's a little more conversational, a little more casual. Help yourself to coffee and pastries up there as well. This is all leading up to a public forum that's going to happen next week on April 2nd, where we're going to talk about both the Killam and the ReCal project. This meeting is exclusively about ReCal, so Reading Center for Active Living. So we'll go through a little bit of the background and development of the project. Looking around, I know a lot of people probably know some of this, but just by way of background, we want to do that. We'll talk about the facility overview and use. We'll talk about design and budget development. And we'll talk about the cost, which I think everybody wants to know about, and the tax implications for residents. And we'll also talk a little bit about the approval process going forward and what happens next. And then we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers after that. So if you want to advance the slide, I think I covered that first slide anyway. Let's see. So that's my first slide, and I'm going to hand it over to Mark Doxer, who's a select board member, at least for another few weeks. And has been very involved in this project. And we see this as a very important project for the town. That's why we've had so many meetings on it, so much outreach. One of our top priorities. So I'll turn it over to Mark.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, folks. Thanks for coming out this morning. I am going to be really brief this morning, but what I want to do is, Matt mentioned, the cost side, obviously, but what's very important is the benefit side. What are we getting for this and why are we doing it? So the background here, it's actually been 10 years in the planning. We've been talking since 2015 about the needs that we're not able to meet in the community, specifically for age 60 plus, both in terms of programs and physical space and physical facility. And that's really kind of what has been the driver of this. We've gone through a whole series of different studies, but kind of fast forward somewhat to 2021. And the select board got together and said, hey, this is something we need to look at. And we formed a committee to go through it of members of the community. The board allocated some ARPA funds, some of those federal relief funds, so that we could do this work, so we could do a feasibility study, so we could understand the needs in the community, and we could talk about what's going on, find out best practices and see what's happening. So that group moved ahead and brought together a lot of information, kind of culminating in the hiring of the H+A architectural design firm to put together some concepts of what we'd be working on and to take a look at the different locations in town that we could work with. And as you all know, there's not a whole lot of open space in town. So it was really taking a look at a few things, which I'll show you in just a moment. So we put all that together. We came back with, first of all, a recommendation on the site, which is Simons Way. And again, I'll show you the three things that we looked at, but Simons Way is across from the ice arena. And we talked about how we could meet the needs of the community. And we did a number of studies, which I'll show you a little bit about also. We brought that forward as a series of recommendations. We've been getting very, very strong support. The Council on Aging, the committee, the ReCalc committee, so Reading Center for Active Living Committee, ReCalc, now ReCal, we've chopped off the C. And then it went to the Permanent Building Committee, which is part of the town that takes a look at all large projects. And it's made up of a whole series of engineers and architects and building professionals. They also engaged in the project. The short story is everybody unanimously has been supporting the location at Simons Way and then working on the specifics of what the project would be to make sure it meets the needs of the community and is done as efficiently and as fiscally efficiently as possible. The next steps here are, number one, it's going to come to town meeting on May 2nd. Is that right?
May 1st.
May 1st, thank you.
Yeah.
May 1st for approval there. Then it will go to a town-wide vote on May the 13th. Thank you. May 13th. So everyone would have a chance to see this and talk about it. We want to make sure you're able to gather all the information that's needed. So next slide, please. So why are we here? We're talking about needs, not wants. needs to support the 60+ community. I showed you kind of all that background over the last 10 years. This community has almost, right at this point, we're at 29% of this community is aged 60+, with a number of people poised to cross that barrier soon. So we expect it to be at least 30% and probably going higher. So this is part of a nationwide trend, but it's very Reading specific in terms of what we're talking about. This is a really sizable segment of the community. What we want to do is make sure that we have a more accessible and inclusive space that can meet the needs of what we're talking about in a lot of different ways. One of the things that we've been working on is how do you get younger seniors to avail themselves of some of the services that are here as well. That's been a challenge that we've been facing. And that's part of what's going on here in the project. Next slide, please. So folks, if you've been to the Pleasant Street Center, it's a lovely building, but it has a lot of shortcomings for what our needs are. So you can see that the various things, I won't go through each of them, but net, there isn't enough space to do what we want to do. It's just physically too limited. And there are other aspects that wrap around that. We can't run the programs we want. Many of the programs we do run have wait lists. It's not able to do what we want and need to do. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we did as part of that committee was to do a survey in the community, and we got 1,472 responses to that survey. Not a purely scientific survey, but a lot of people responded to it. And some interesting things came back. And the biggest ones were, what would you like to see? Where would you like to see it? How much would you be willing to pay? Just kind of a number getting thrown out. So just going through each of those just for a moment. There was strong support for, I'm going to call it an all ages community center with dedicated space focused on age 60+. So that was the largest chunk going on. On the left-hand graph here, you can see by age group what the preference was. And if you look at kind of the light blue color that has the circle around it, that's that kind of all-age community center with dedicated space that's in there. Second question was, well, hey, we'd love to do it downtown. Why can't we do it downtown? And we'll show you why we can't. But one of the questions we wanted to understand from people was, where does it need to be? And what you can see is that basically people were open to multiple locations, so long as we could do the best job meeting the needs of the community. Next slide, please. Okay, on the left-hand side, we wanted to know, will people use it? So if we build it, will they come? Jenna will talk probably a little bit about the experience of other places where when they've started to meet the needs of the community, how many more people come. And it's a massive change in terms of what's going on. We wanted to ask our citizens, what would be your interest in using this? And if you look at the one that's circled, that's an all ages community center, including designated space and programming for residents age 60+. And you see more than 3/4 of the people said they would use it, which is fantastic. The one on the far right was asking a question, just kind of throwing it out there, saying, how much would you pay? Without any context. What you can see is about 59% said they'd spend kind of that $100 plus, 30% said $200 plus. And this is back now in 2022. And unfortunately, those dollars are different from 2025 dollars, right? Next slide, please. We looked at 3 possible locations in depth. We started with looking at everything. Some of you may be aware we looked at the old Walgreens building to see if that's something that the town could acquire. Unfortunately, we couldn't. We narrowed it down to 3 locations where we did much more in-depth look at things that were going on. On the far left was looking at the existing Pleasant Street Center to see what we could do with that. In the middle was looking at Oakland Road, kind of across the street from the Performing Arts Center, kind of in the woods over there, which is some town-owned land. And then the far right was Simon's Way. And we went through, multiple groups went through a site ranking kind of activity because there's no perfect site. You wanted to figure out what were the trade-offs, what made the most sense to work on given kind of what we've got here and what's going on. Next slide, please. So we brought all these rankings together, and what you're going to see is between the Reading Center for Active Living Committee, the Architect BH+A, the Council on Aging, TTH, which Brian represents here, which is the project manager that we've hired for the project, the Permanent Building Committee, the Select Board, everybody preferred Simon's Way as the #1 choice. So unanimous across all these different groups. Next one, please. And that's where I turn it back over to, am I going to?
Me.
to Jenna. Thanks, Jenna.
Hello, I'm Jenna Wood. I'm the Community Services Director. I'm going to kick it off by playing a video that was made by Dave Cartoonan that outlines more of the design and the facility overview of the proposed retail center. Hold on. I gotta unmute myself on my actual computer here, so sorry.
Have you heard about the new Reading Center for Active Living, or RECAL? It's a new community asset which is meant to create a center of activity and connection for our residents. The proposed site is adjacent to the Burbank Ice Arena on Simons Way. RECAL is built around its program rooms, thoughtfully crafted to meet the diverse needs of our 60-plus community with dedicated senior hub space, while providing new recreation space and areas dedicated to veterans services. The building opens into a spacious and inviting lobby with information and resources available about programming. It will offer versatile spaces for classes, workshops, and group activities from educational seminars to yoga, all of which will support our 60-plus population for programming, including a lounge and cafe, both perfect for relaxation or impromptu gathering with friends, and an adjacent patio expanding space into the outdoors. A maker space equipped with tools and materials for crafting, sewing, robotics, and other hands-on projects. A billiards room on the second floor with an adjacent roof deck overlooking the conservation land. A game room and card room for friendly competition and camaraderie. There are multi-use rooms for larger gatherings and events, enabling multi-generational activities, and so much more. A full kitchen, not just for preparing meals, but a center for cooking classes and shared experiences. And finally, the gymnasium and walking track that loops above, supporting the senior community's desire for athletic programming as well.
So close. Sorry. Okay, well, I apologize for that.
We should bring a copy of the script so we can just add a little bit to the end.
I'm gonna just bump to the next slide here because we'll talk a little bit more about the building. We also do have a really great walkthrough video of the building as well. That you can go into the actual building virtually, and it's like you're in each of the rooms. So we hope to have that at the forum next week for the public that comes to the next forum. So informed with all of these decisions from RECAL, community input, council on aging, recreation, we have formed this vision statement and this mission statement as staff and as a really collaborative team of residents and boards and things like that. So we came up with this thoughtful vision statement and mission statement. These are the three divisions that will be in the building: Elder and Human Services, Veterans, and Recreation. There are a variety of different age groups that all of these divisions serve. Elder and Human Services isn't exclusive to just 60-plus population. They do serve a lot of the other members of the community and social services and in their nursing program. Recreation also serves several of our 60-plus population in the evening and the afternoon hours with their programming, as well as all of the special events that they run. Veterans, 50% of veterans in our community are 60-plus. So the Veterans Division also does service a lot of our 60-plus population, as well as a younger population in our town. So we as staff think that this building is going to be a tremendous asset for not only our 60-plus as the priority, of course, because they're losing their building, but for other members of our community, and to really create a space that everyone feels safe and everyone has an opportunity to connect in the community. So kind of informing that decision, Vivek Murthy in 2023 released a really powerful advisory on the epidemic of loneliness and isolation. And this study, it's an 82-page study. I did go through it, didn't read the whole thing, but it's pretty powerful. He went around the whole United States and he cited that loneliness and isolation was not just an issue with the 60+ population. That's an extremely vulnerable population, but it was across the board. Our society struggles with being isolated, being lonely, and it has a tremendous effect on how we communicate with people individually, and the impacts that it has in our community can be really detrimental from a financial standpoint and from a social standpoint. So here's just some of the takeaways from the study. And in the next slide, which is really powerful, just has some really crazy statistics on the lack of social connection and how dangerous it is. And it's more dangerous than smoking 15 cigarettes a day, drinking 9 alcoholic drinks daily, physical inactivity, obesity, and air pollution. So in the study, there are 6 pillars to advance social connection. And number 1 is exactly the ReCal building. Strengthening the social infrastructure in your local community, designing a built environment to promote social connection, establishing and scaling community connection programs, and investing in a local institution that brings people together. So here's the aerial view of the building. You'll see that there's great opportunities that already exist over there currently. We have the youth fields that are in the back. There's a baseball field, the batting cage, as well as a multi-purpose field. These fields are used by not only our youth organizations, but our high school sports teams. We have the Burbank Ice Arena, who runs the North Shore Skating Club, and houses, again, Reading Youth Hockey and Reading High School Hockey. We also run our adaptive special skates program there in recreation. So we have a lot of connections to the Burbank Ice Arena and really appreciate that current partnership with them. We have the pickleball courts that are proposed. It's a separate project, but certainly something that we discussed quite a bit on the ReCal committee. And it's been a very hot topic in our community for quite some time. Myself and several other people in this room have been working tremendously hard on that. That will be at town meeting. And you'll see the ReCal building. So what a beautiful space this will be for our community and a great community resource area as a whole. You'll also see, I want to point out the pathway that's also included in the final price of the ReCal project. So there'll be a stone dust path there, and then conservation has indicated that they would be asking for a grant and actually helping to get some volunteers to produce a good portion of that path that's in the conservation land. So it's really been a very great collaborative effort, and we can see this space as just being a very welcoming space for everyone in our community. So I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty details. There was an operations plan that we're working on currently, and we did go over a lot of the operational statistics and data in the last public forum. But there are, again, numerous benefits that we will have in a new building like ReCal. So here's just some of the things that we'll be able to do: increasing community meals on a daily basis. We have about 60 people comfortably that will be able to take in the center currently. We'll be able to over double that with our new space. We'll be able to cook and prepare meals. The gymnasium will provide several recreational opportunities, and just the impact that the walking track will have for connectivity and for folks to go and meet. And speaking with all of the other communities that have a building like this with the gymnasium and the walking track, they've indicated that that's by far one of the top spaces that gets used on a day-to-day basis, and by far one of the top places that intergenerational opportunities happen. And it's just very heavily utilized. So benefits of recreation and ReCal: they'll be able to come in when spaces are not being used by the Elder and Human Services Division, and they'll be able to create some after-school programming and other opportunities for the 60+ population in the afternoon and in the evenings at night. And recreation, another powerful thing that we hope to show in the operational plan, will be able to help offset a lot of the financial staffing that we'll have in the building. So recreation can pay a lot of the part-time staff out of the revolving fund, which we currently do with our part-time staff anyways. So we have our program fees for summer camp, and then we'll pay our part-time employees out of that revolving fund. So that's how we see this building operating, and that being a big contributor financially to help sustain the building and offer additional programming and staff support, which a lot of other centers who have little staff support have cited that, hey, having 5 people in this building, like, we don't even know how we run it, and we close at X time. So they said that the more staff in this building, the better the programming, the better the community and team vibe is. So the Veterans Division, extremely important. Will's not here today, but he cannot emphasize enough how tremendous this would be for his Veterans Department. Right now, he's in the basement. So the veterans don't have an access point to just go to him. They have to check in at the recreation desk, and then lovely Sue will tell Will that they're here. But a lot of the times veterans just want that direct access point. They want to walk in, they want to see someone. They deserve a place to socialize and a lounge to be together. And we want to reach a lot of younger veterans. We want to have more educational opportunities for our community to learn about veterans. And this will just provide a huge opportunity for Will. Also, he runs all of these veterans events throughout the year, and having a rain location or a location that we could go after to run his events on Memorial Day and Veterans Day would be just so great for him. And Reading, this place will be for everyone. 60 plus, we're building this facility. This is kind of how this recal all came into play, is that the priority would be for the 60 plus, but there will be opportunities for everyone in our community as well. And here's how there will be something for everyone. You'll see up here, there'll be a senior hub with a lounge, a cafe area with coffee, a card room, a game room, a fitness room on the first floor, a place where the 60 plus population can come and really congregate and have a safe space and a meeting space to hang out with each other. Now, when I say that, I emphasized in the last meeting that the senior hub isn't the only space that the seniors will have access to in the building. The seniors will have access to the gymnasium. We have a whole plan that we have 50 plus programs for the 60 plus population that are on our proposed plan. And several of those are in the gymnasium and bocce ball, pickleball. So there'll be a variety of 60 plus programs in every single room of this building. And when they're not being used for the 60 plus population, of course, there'll be opportunities for our adult population in enrichment and sports programs in the evening and in the afternoons. Middle school and high school programs, elementary aged, infants and toddlers. I spoke to this a little bit on Tuesday, the opportunities for the morning taught and parent class, but how many grandparents do we know watch their grandchildren during the day? So wouldn't it be great if grandma could come in and take little Johnny with her to the music class, or drop off Johnny at a talk class and go and take a Zumba class? So there could be opportunities like that as well. And then all members of the community, access to the walking track and the fitness equipment room, drop-in times for gym use. Again, recreational enrichment programs for all ages, access to our public health and social service resources who serve all ages. That's a huge one. We have so many resources that we offer through our community, and we can really help people who are in need for all ages. An outdoor patio to enjoy a meal, coffee, and socialize on the second floor. There'll be opportunity to rent spaces for parties, baby showers, wedding receptions, banquets. A place for town community events like the Friends of Reading Rec Daddy Daughter Dance, Memorial and Veterans Day receptions, plays, performances. We also have 2 offsite events at Hillview that we have for our 60 plus population that we can now run in this facility and not pay to go to an offsite facility. an emergency shelter for the town and a voting location for the town. And now I will hand it off to, because Pat's not here, right?
Unless he's on the Zoom, but I don't think he is.
Yeah, hi, my name is Brian Ramatka. I'm the project manager that was brought on to assist with this project. And we don't have anyone here from the Permanent Building Committee this morning. Those are all residents of Reading that are highly experienced in construction. So we have architects, engineers, contractors, lawyers, all the specialized knowledge that you need to build a project. So the Permanent Building Committee oversees all those large capital projects for the residents of Reading. And we work together with them to guide the project through to make sure that the town ends up with a quality facility that meets the budget and that you have something that can last for a long period of time. There's a lot of decisions, thousands of decisions that are made during the design process. So the Permanent Building Committee works together with the architect. We have Joel here from BH+A, and with myself as the owner project manager to guide the project forward. So I can click to the next slide. So I know we want to talk a lot about the costs, so I'm just going to touch on this briefly, and I'm happy to answer more questions as we move forward. But what I'd first like to do is just to give you a framework of kind of what things cost and how we got to the price that we did for this particular project. So as you heard from Mark earlier, there was a feasibility that was done a number of years ago. At that point, the estimated costs for the projects were about 28 to 29 million. And that was based on a range of square footage estimates. All the programming hadn't been finalized at that point. And it was based on construction starting this year, which we're not doing, and carrying a $2.6 million contingency. So if we take those numbers and then we adjust them, if you can click to the next one, to what things look like today. So that's adjusting for the square footage based on the program that's needed for that space, looking at construction to start next year and carrying a $4.7 million contingency. Those earlier numbers were adjusted to about 33 or 34 million. So the next thing we did is we said, okay, well, that's a good starting point. What does that look like for other communities? We know that a lot of communities in Massachusetts have built similar facilities, whether it's a new senior center or whether it's a center for active living that incorporates other community uses into the building. So if you can click to the next one. So we tried to do a good comparison, and this is really a difficult task to accomplish because every project is unique, whether it's the site issues, whether it's the building size, how the building is constructed, what type of structural system, what type of mechanical systems. Is it only for the seniors, or is it a whole community? Is it a renovation of a facility, which a number of communities have had? Some of them even have pools within their community centers, or is it something that's much smaller? So we worked through all those and tried to make it as close as possible to an apples-to-apples comparison. Also looking at when these facilities were constructed, because in the construction market, there's been a significant change in construction costs post the COVID pandemic. So looking at that, we came up with the bottom. You can see there was a range of about 27 to 34 million. That's still a pretty big range. Based on some information we had about the site, we estimated that it would be probably closer to the higher end of the range, but it was still, a range. If you can click to the next slide. So those are kind of, the first base points that we had established. And we talked to members of the town about what this project really needs to be. And the voice that we heard was, in order for this project to work for the town of Reading, it needs to come in under $30 million. So we worked together with the design team here, BH+A, with the Permanent Building Committee, to make sure that we were able to put forth a project and a budget that was below that 30 million. And you can see the budget number that was approved by the Permanent Building Committee was for 27.9 million. And if you click to the next slide, I can talk a little bit more detail about that. So how do we get that? As I said, there was a range, so every project is different, but the tactics that we're using is to use cost conscientious design. So that's looking at the cost of different material decisions that are made on the project, whether it's the structural system, how the foundations are going to be put together, what type of HVAC system is used, and those things will continue on through the design phase. We're not finished with the design yet, so there's still many decisions that need to be made relative to finishes and, exact detailing of the building. And then also executing responsible financial planning of the decision. So we have a big part in that to understand the overall financial cost of construction projects, making sure that there's ample amount of contingencies to protect the project and the residents of the town so that you don't have cost overruns and the town doesn't need to come back to the residents to ask for more money. All those things are built into the project. If you can click to the next slide. So here you can see, I know you can't see all the numbers on there, but that's the total project budget. And it's inclusive of all the costs. So we've tried to, estimate every expense for the project. Furniture, technology, moving costs, hiring testing agencies, all the additional design work that needs to be done, the management work, the overhead costs for the contractor. All of that stuff is built into that number of 27.9 million. And as I mentioned, it does include a number of contingencies. And if you see on the upper right-hand part of the slide, you can see the various contingencies that we have built in that actually total nearly $5 million. So it's necessary to have these contingencies built in, right? You can't go forward with the construction project and say, okay, this is what the construction cost is, this is what the design cost is, and that's the check that we need to write. Because there are constant changes that happen. Beginning with the design process, as I mentioned, we still have, thousands of decisions that are going to be made about the detailing of the project, about materials. As those decisions haven't been made yet, there are cost implications for every decision. So there's a contingency that we carry based on our project experience for this project. So we have 1.6 million built into that design and pricing contingency. We have contingencies built in for inflation. I think everyone in this room knows that costs usually don't go down. They typically go up month by month. So those contingencies are built in. And if anyone's paying attention to the politics, we also have tariffs now that are likely going to be impacting the cost of some of the material, not all of them, but some of the materials that will be used on this project. So those contingencies are there to cover those things, as well as things that come up during the construction process, unknown conditions in the soil and so forth. So all of that is built in, and we've also included some additional things that, weren't initially on the table, but to make sure that we have very good windows. We know that there are going to be some sound concerns, having the pickleball there, and then also the shooting range further north. So we have triple pane windows that should keep the building nice and quiet for the occupants. And you can see the other things there. So just real quick on the schedule. So one of the tools we use working together with the designer was to tighten up the whole design schedule. And that enabled us to save some of the escalation costs and reduce the overall cost impact to the town. So in order to accomplish that, we do need the project to be approved in May in order to complete the design by the end of the year and get the project out to bid and get shovels in the ground the first of 2026. That'll allow us to stay within that budget. And on that timeline, we would expect that the building would open up in the fall of 2027. So not too much longer. Go to the next slide, please. And I'll turn it over to Sharon to talk a little bit about how those costs affect the taxes for residents.
Thank you. I'm Sharon Engstrom. I'm the CFO and town accountant for the town. So when we got these costs, the first thing we did was reach out to our bonding agent to determine kind of what the different terms would be in terms of borrowing this money, what it would cost. So we reached out and asked for a 15-year borrowing, a 20-year borrowing, a 25 and a 30. And we analyzed that data to determine what can we do here that would be most affordable and minimize the interest that we pay. The treasurer makes the actual decision on the term that we borrow. So I worked closely with the treasurer to analyze the data that we got back. And we determined that for this particular project, the best option would be a 15-year borrowing, which would impact the taxpayer to the tune of $265 $8,000.04 a year. That's the average taxpayer, which is an $890,000 home. Can you go to the next slide, please? So as with any borrowing that you do in your personal finances, when it comes to a shorter term, you get a better rate. And so we were looking at a coupon rate of 3% if we did a 15-year. The total, as I mentioned, $265 of estimated impact is based on $29.78 per 100,000. We also have some excluded debt that's being retired over the last couple of years. So last year we paid the last excluded debt payment on the high school in Wood End. And this year is the last debt payment for the library, which falls off this year. So the combination of those three excluded debts coming off our rolls for the average taxpayer will save you $387 a year. And that average taxpayer, as I said, is an $890,000. So with those being considered, if this was the only project we were entertaining, you'd be looking at a tax reduction of $122. However, we all know that we're looking at not just ReCal, but also the Killam School. So I should mention that you only get the $387 savings once. Next slide, please. So we thought it important to even mention here, even though we're not really discussing Killam here, is just to go over the overall impact for both projects if they were both to pass. So Killam was a 20-year borrowing that we ended up landing on at $734 a year for that average home. And then $265 for ReCal, which is a total of about $999 for that average home for a year. But when you consider the retirement of the three excluded debts that I mentioned, and that $387 a year that you'd be saving, the net impact is $612 a year. There are grants related to the MSBA project, but not specific to this particular project. So that's why it says after grants. $890,000, as I mentioned, is your average home. So that would be $51 a month or $12 a week for that average home. Next, I think there's a couple more comments on that slide. So we do offer tax assistance for those who are in need. We do have a senior tax relief program here in Reading, which is very helpful. And then we will have a calculator on our website to help you determine what the impact is for your home. If you know your assessed value, you can go in and put that in, and it will tell you for each project what the impact will be. I think we'll have something on the website as well with the excluded debt falling off, so you know the net impacts. The other thing that's important to note is that, you know, with these projects, they're quite large. I wouldn't go out and borrow this money right away, like all of it. We'd be borrowing it in tranches, so you wouldn't see the full impact for a good 2 or 3 years of both the projects, because we'd be borrowing it as money is needed for the project. So we wouldn't go out and borrow the whole thing. So it wouldn't be like next year you would see this huge impact hitting your bill. It would be gradual over the next 2 to 3 years. I'm going to pass it up to Matt.
Back to me, yep. And I just have a couple wrap-up slides, then we'll get to the questions and answers. So the approval process, if you look up, if you see the pink approval right under that, there's some meetings listed in green. Those are the approvals that had already happened. So the PBC, which is the Permanent Building Committee, already voted their approval. Select Board voiced their support back earlier this month. And also the Finance Committee got a great update earlier this month as well. So coming up next week, the Select Board plans to vote on the warrant article for the project. Finance Committee the following day is going to also vote on those. And I think the Select Board also has sort of an acclamation vote to vote of support on both projects, both the Killam and the ReCalc on their meeting on the 1st. We then go to town meeting. We're going to have a special town meeting within a town meeting. It gets a little complicated, but the date to remember there, as you can see, is May 1st. That's when town meeting will have both projects in their hands. And then it goes to a special town vote, which is an election, just like any other election. And that, as Mark mentioned earlier, will be on the 13th of May. So a lot of things happening quickly the next month or two. You can go to the next slide, Jenna. So we've done a lot of public engagement. As I mentioned in the beginning, we had a forum back in December, a forum back in January. We had a lunch and learn back in January. Just earlier this week, we were back to the Pleasant Street Center for our 3rd public forum. Today is our coffee and chat. You can see up at the top of the screen. And then next week on the 2nd, we're going to have that forum that I talked about. That's going to be both Killam and Recalc. And that's going to be at the Performing Arts Center at the high school. So plenty of room there, can hold hundreds of people. So that's the time to sort of come out. We're encouraging town meeting members to come as well because it's going to be in their hands next. So that is really the overview of our public forums. We're going to also have a Zoom meeting. I think it's the 16th of April, which will also cover the same topics. For those who can't make it to the forum on the 2nd, which is at night, the Zoom meeting will be during the day and things will be recorded so they can also watch later on YouTube or RCTV. And I think my last slide, again, about public engagement. We've done a lot of work so far in public engagement, but we're still open to suggestions. There's an email address that you can email us. We have a suggestion box. I think there's one right at the back of the room here, but there is one outside of my office and one down at the Pleasant Street Center if people would prefer to write out their suggestions. The local media has covered it quite a bit. We have our website. We have the newsletters that we sent out, including the pleasantries, trying to get the word out and trying to get more feedback from people as best we can as we head into these last crucial months of the project development. So we're open to that. And then coming up today here, we'll also have some time for questions and answers, which I think will start now. I think if people have questions, you could probably say them from your seat. Sometimes for Zoom audience, if you want to come up to the podium, but we want people to be comfortable. So whatever's more comfortable for you, either to the podium or ask your questions, raise your hand. We'll try to answer as best we can. So thank you again for coming, and we'll turn it over for questions and answers.
And we can also end the Zoom and you can ask us offline too, if you would
Right.
prefer that.
And we'll be here after to mingle and have some coffee with you. Yes.
Hi, my name's Richard. I noticed on the Reading town maps
Hmm.
that this property is zoned S40 for a single family residence. How do we get around that? Putting this building up on that property is not zoned for that.
Huh.
I'm not too
I-
familiar with what S40 does, but I
Yeah,
did notice that, and I figured if the people that live around there that
That's
aren't
perfect.
on single family residences complain about it,
yeah, right,
then what do you do about that?
right. Can anybody speak to the zoning? Otherwise,
The zoning for that property does allow a community center use, so that was,
S40 allows that, use,
I don't know if it's exactly S40, I remember from the feasibility study that,
because that's what's on the maps on town.
Yeah.
Done in 2017, so it's not that old.
No.
And my concern was if the people that live around there that have single family homes, if they complain about it, then what happens then?
I mean, I know that that particular use is allowed, but the town's not really has to comply with the zoning, they're exempt from the zoning requirements, so that's
Okay.
the other option. I mean, one of the beauties of that site is there are no residential abutters nearby that particular property, so.
It's just that there are other residential people that have to worry about floodplains and if it's gonna push water off this way or that way, how to deal with that.
Yeah, the site's designed so that the water is not pushed off the site. The law is stated and the design is such that all water that comes onto the building or the parking lots has to be contained within the site. You're not allowed to push it beyond the site boundaries, so that it wouldn't be an impact of changing for exactly the reason that you're asking.
good question.
Good question, yeah.
There'll be water retention areas on the site that will channel it all and keep it there so that it can go into the ground.
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, could you put up the slide that shows the option, that shows the aerial view kind of what it looks like as far as the range road that, not that.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Point out stuff the signs. I mean, if there's one that shows the three options, that's.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your patience.
me trying to do that.
There you go.
Hard when you don't have Jackie. All right, Caitlin,
I know. Staff today. We actually do have a site plan right over there.
I got it.
Particularly. These here is. All right, this is the. This,
That's
it's kind of hard to see it.
Yeah, that's
That's-
Simon's Way.
This is Simon's Way.
Yeah,
Which
and
is
it's over the
actually,
hill.
Simon's Way is from Havel Street. And then it goes on this side of the Burbank Arena. And then this is actually Range Road. And Range Road was out of the picture. So that's where the rifle range is. Revolver and gun club that's been there since the 19.
Right.
So that is an area, after I did speak about a few of these things 2 nights ago. But, and I have followed construction, more school construction for like 30 years. So I'm kind of aware of construction materials and things. The 3 paned windows might be good for keeping the noise of the pickleball and the range, the firing range, from disturbing people in the building. But I believe, see, there are this potential walking paths around here. It's going to be very loud there. But you know, people walking around. There are playing fields over here, and people with children play on these really can hear the shooting from the gun range. So I mean, I'm very concerned about that. This is swamp around here, that area. And that means that there probably will also be difficulties with like the soil. And I know that believe you, Brian, said something about the soil composition. And that they've already taken that into consideration.
Yes, that's correct.
With that, but I know sometimes you never know. I know what's in that. I know it used to be a missile range. That supposedly there are no talks. Someone came up to me afterwards on Wednesday, or on Tuesday night, and just said, if you walk there during the day, I mean, in the summertime, he said, this is mosquito land. It's just unbelievable. He said, people playing pickleball are gonna find this a challenge too. And that is a problem. I believe at some points we have found that there are mosquito issues and we've also found some of the various viruses that have been spread by mosquitoes. We've had samples from there, and a lot of smokers have too. So, but I mean, I think I'm still really concerned about structure. I love the design's great. I've been to the parts in Situate and up the Mill Shore, and I've gone to a lot of them because I've also worked on legislation for elders and trying to make this kind of thing. I understand, I guess, what I'm saying, the problems and the issues. But I'm not, to me, I'm having a hard time getting beyond this location. There's the Camp Curtis Guild is over here, and it's swamp, and it is very loud. I mean, I understand, some people said, oh, it's not very far, it's far up the road. Well, I urge you to go to the firing, the rifle range. I'm also concerned that I know that there have been a lot of committee meetings and discussions and things, but I'm very concerned that people that are going to be mostly affected still aren't reached because a lot of people are not online. They're people 60 and over, or people with disabilities, vision issues, and the surveys have been done through like SurveyMonkey, UMass Boston Gerontology. That department did that, and having a lot of neighbors at one point that were not online. There are also people that were not able to do the SurveyMonkey. I actually went to the library and tried to get printed copies so they could do that. There were options to speak, to call into UMass Boston on the surveys at times. Some of the questions had like 10 different options for you to choose on each question. And that's very difficult to do online. No, it's bad enough online, but it's very difficult. So when I see that 1,740 people were responded to what they liked the best and didn't, I wonder, who are we not reaching? I mean, and even today, I know that Comcast is having problems. So the past 3 days, if you have Comcast and ICTV has been primary source for some people to be able to know what's going on. If you have that, they have been able to get it. In fact, now this one, it's not on today. Channel 6, 9, and 22, it's not on. And, but it is on Verizon section. So if people have Verizon and they were expecting to watch this, they can see it, but people are out. So I just feel that, you know, that there are some things that haven't been pursued that look like they're pursued. And if people have questions, many times, I wish there would be phone numbers. And even, I wish that their name tags were on there, because for people, if, when they watch it at, say, 1 a.m., you know, it's difficult sometimes to know who these people are. So I think it's important, but I think this is a really good project, looks good, but I have a real problem with the location.
Yeah, I understand that. And just to
But I
speak a
did
little.
want to raise some of the things that
Yeah.
people had said to me afterwards. I said,
Oh, thank you. Thank you for speaking again today.
What you raised, that's all, that's always.
I would love to respond to the survey and how we engage the community. And I've been involved since 2021, and at the time, worked very closely with the assistant town manager, the council on aging, ReCal. And when I tell you, we printed out several, like probably 1,000 copies of that survey, and we were having times that we would help the 60+ population at the center, fill them out. And there was drop-off locations at the town hall, at the Pleasant Street Center, and I believe they were even at the library. So there was copies of the survey everywhere. And then in advance too, we sent out a postcard like you cited, and said, hey, you can call a number, you can reach out this way. So, and then we did a lot of community engagement online and things like that. So we did try to really get as much input as we could specifically from the 60+ population. I don't know the exact number out of the 1,472 that were 60+ that responded, but I know that it was a pretty big number. And we were really happy with that because, again, this was like the precipice of how this all started, is that the existing Pleasant Street Center is not adequate for our 60+ population. I know Pat also spoke really well last meeting in regard to there being no perfect site, and that all of these different boards, committees, and all the architects and designers that have been working on the project went through this extensive rating process, and there were some conversations and meetings about these sites. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of sites in this town that we could choose from. So I don't know if anyone wants to speak a little bit more to that, because you were on the committee.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to speak to a lot of things. Ken. So Kendra, as usual, you brought up a lot of good topics here. Yeah, no, absolutely. And so one of the things that we're struggling with, both with this project and with the school project, is to reach out to as many people as we can and to get to more people and to encourage them to engage now and ask questions and understand what's going on before they're faced with a vote that's going to come up in May. So thinking of ways that we can do that is great, and asking people who are here to kind of, spread the word, talk about it, let people know the resources, invite people to come to the high school if they can for the meeting on April. I keep doing this wrong. April 2nd. Thank you. Not doing dates well today.
Yeah.
It's a 19.
Yes, it's
Yes.
7 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's a whole age level.
Absolutely. And Matt showed that slide about all the different ways we're trying to reach out, and would love help, frankly, to do it even better, to reach out to as many people as we can. And I know, Chris is in the audience. Chris is spending a lot of time at the center. There are resources there. You can see the pictures in terms of what's going on. So we're trying to make it as accessible as possible in every way. There isn't a single way, and all the ones, it's still not enough. So more is better. As it relates to kind of talking to people about what's going on here, we did go through this extensive survey and site ranking. And to your point, some things were great on different sites and horrible on others. But what was really interesting to me is that despite the group who was looking at it, we came up with the same ranking, that Simon's Way was the best. Is it perfect? No. Is it going to have issues? Yes. That's why we have experts to work with us to figure out, okay, what's the best thing that we can do with this site? How do you work through that scenario? There was a gentleman who spoke at the meeting 2 nights ago. And all of us who've had kids who played on the fields up there, initially it's kind of, oh my God, what was that? And then you don't even notice it. Unfortunately, because you get used to it. But that was one of the things that was considered in this whole discussion was how is that going to work? And to the point on this triple glazed or triple pane windows, we're trying to mitigate things, right? The sound. It turns out it's great for sound. It's great for energy efficiency. It actually does a lot of stuff. That's a part of this building that's already in. So I anticipate there'll be a lot of stuff that happens after approval in terms of saying, okay, how do we manage this? How do we figure out the best way to do this? What are the issues that we've already talked about? Now let's look at the different solutions and figure out which are the right ones. So I think that's kind of where we are in terms of how to do it. Chris.
I know we have a joint meeting next week, correct, on Wednesday evening?
Yes.
Is that correct? At the
Yes.
high school. If it is a concern, I am also happy, we have 2 buses, I'm happy to grab one of the buses next Wednesday night. If someone needs a ride, then I'm happy to bring them to that meeting and take them home afterwards. So if you do know somebody who can't get to the meeting, please let me know. I'm at the Pleasant Street Center. And again, I'm happy to grab the bus. I will drive them there personally from the bus and home. So I want to make sure people are informed, especially our older adult population. And I don't want that to be a restriction. So please let me know.
Thanks, Chris. Maybe we could even have like some type of viewing and after viewing for folks who are having trouble viewing it online or getting to the meeting. We can replay the video at the center within the next couple weeks or something like that.
I think online has become the fallback. And I mean, I understand it's convenient. But it's become the fallback, and I'm realizing, and this isn't just a Reading problem, this is a national problem. The national organizations I belong to, we're at a loss in some ways. But particularly with this project, I continually run into people who don't even know what's going on with that. Because they don't go to the senior center, and considering what is it, 7,000 people 60 and over are in Reading who are 60 and over, and yet 2,000 use the senior center. And there was someone else brought something up too about there'd be transportation to get out there for children and for elders, and 2 buses. I mean, I appreciate your offer and stuff, but 2 that's not nearly enough. You put what elders need or adults need, or do people with disabilities. So,
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm just saying, we're purposely putting it in an area that is really not a lot.
Yeah.
They do teach rifles and shooting and everything, and there are, and especially in the Midwest, there are a lot of, it's intergenerational that way too.
Yeah.
But if that's what I'm thinking, I'm really thinking, I'm very concerned about the location, the sound, where it is, and what people want to go.
Yeah, and just to touch a little bit on the transportation element, like you said, we do have 1 van right now. We have capabilities of putting the 2nd van on the road right now. We do have the recreation vehicle. But in addition, we've visited several other communities, right, who use different transportation systems. They use GoGo, they use Salem Skipper, which is used as a vented out program. So in the past few months, actually, the team and Jane Wallman have met with these different companies to explore different opportunities for transportations for our community. So obviously we can't really do anything. We have to wait to see if the voters do pass the project, but we do have a proactive plan in place and some really great thoughts and ideas on how we can get it done if that's a need in the community.
There are different.
Yeah, Burlington uses,
Very different
yep.
approaches, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we've been collecting. We have like all that data from how the different communities do it. And we're meeting with those companies to see what would work for our town.
I see Martha's hand, but I don't see her.
We could just hang on 1 second. So you also brought up some questions about the mosquitoes and the soil. So just so that wasn't missed, and I'm sorry about the delay in getting your question out there. But maybe Joel, you can talk about, the the geotech, the peer review, and, you know, some of the ideas for mosquito control.
So the issue on the soil, you are adjacent, you're correct, there's adjacent wetlands, but the soil's been tested on the site at the pickleball area and the recal area. There were several borings and we've had 2 engineers look at those results. The area where the building would go and where we would need to retain water for the parking lot and the pickleball courts, that's all well drained. There's more than 8 feet of glacial till on top of the regular soil. That's very good for drainage and moisture control. So there's been a civil engineer that's taken the design. We've been to the Conservation Commission and we met preliminarily with the planning board and the DPW with those findings. And as far as you can get in schematic design, we've done that with engineers and gotten real data on the capability of the site to manage the drainage on site that's required. So it's actually a very good site for drainage. As far as the mosquitoes go, we acknowledge that Massachusetts, you have mosquitoes in a lot of sites, baseball fields, whether they're wetlands or not. I would point out that the problems are dusk to later in the evening, not generally during the day. But we've contacted a hygienist who did a report of all the agencies that are available and the services that are available to mitigate mosquitoes if they are on site. So that was part of the feasibility study because we didn't want to recommend a site where that issue came up. And there are 3 companies in Reading or serving the Reading area themselves that do non-chemical mosquito abatement issues for projects like this, for large homes, golf courses, those kinds of facilities where that might be an issue. The town also has their own mosquito control system because mosquitoes, as I mentioned, are town-wide issue. It's not just confined to whatever the particular site where they breed is, they get around to everybody's yard. So that's an ongoing state and town project in every community. But as I mentioned, we've done this research and the consultant that Jenna mentioned is someone we work with all the time. We provided that information to him so that the cost of those abatement companies could be factored into the operational plan and not be a surprise.
Hi, Martha Moore, Sanborn Lane. I would love to have you speak to any energy efficiency things that you're looking into. I'm thinking, I love the idea of the triple pane windows, but are you thinking LED lighting? Is there any possibility of working with RMLD and make a Solar Choice Project 3 out of the parking lot and put solar carports there like they have at the Stone Zoo? Thank you.
So the building, not only are the windows triple pane, but the building has exterior insulation on it, which is much better because it's like putting a coat on the whole building during the winter and that. So it's very highly insulated. The roof is designed to be solar ready. We've done a study and we've done 3 alternative roof options that we've provided to Reading Municipal Light District to take a look at solar applications. So there's a pitched roof version, there's a larger flat roof version. There are 3 options that were studied, but the cost estimate and the design of the building is that the roof is solar ready means the wiring is up there, the structure's up there. You just have to figure out how the solar panels go into it and what source pays for that. Usually that's a third party operation, not a direct cost for the project. The building's fully LED lit. It's low voltage throughout the building. Energy efficient. We have met with Municipal Light District, started that process. Obviously, we don't want to waste their time until the project's been approved to go to the next step, but we do have the groundwork laid for that study and whatever rebates we can get from the municipal light district. The solar on the driveway is a great idea. People love it because the cars stay cool and that, so that still remains an option if we don't put it on the roof. It's not, the canopies for building that are not all that costly, so it is an option that we have in the back pocket if it doesn't work on the roof.
Yeah, if I could just add something to what you mentioned, Joel. So yeah, sustainability and energy efficiency is a very big part of the project. As part of the permanent building committee, we have a working group that's specifically focused on those topics. They have been meeting bi-weekly since the beginning of the project and have brought up a number of issues. Some of those members are very involved in the details in their regular jobs, working with sustainability issues. And as Joel mentioned, you know, the solar is being considered for the project. We have had preliminary meetings with RMLD. Just in a conversation a couple days ago, we discussed also putting solar in the parking. So that's something that's going to be looked at as well. Right now, we're at the schematic design level. So there's still, as I mentioned earlier, many decisions that are going to be made. That's also why we have those contingencies built in, because we're going to work through that process as we move forward. But right now, those things seem to be very promising. It's definitely the goal of the design team, the permanent building committee, and I think the town as the whole, to have the most energy efficient building available and to incorporate as many sustainable technologies as we can on the project. So I would say there's a very high likelihood that all those things will be included, but you know, it's a process that we need to go through throughout the design.
It is an all electric building. There's no gas used, not even in the kitchen. It's all
So
induction.
what is the heating source gonna be?
Heat pumps.
Yeah.
Pumps.
I'm Bruce McKenzie. In the event that somebody mentioned solar carports, I was planning to add, make sure they extend all the way up to the door of the building. So have the solar panels over the cars close enough together so they don't rip on the people. And then run a canopy all the way to the front of the building. And you might run it down between these two rows of parked cars. So where the digit 3 is.
Yeah.
Run walkway down there and picture a fair bit of the cars are covered. Now, to fit a walkway there, you have to plan ahead. So now's the station plan. They also put solar panels over the existing Burbank Arena parking. And let's see, another comment is for your public presentations, can you make some of the text bigger? Go ahead and have some slides that are just really dense text, or at the bottom is dense text, but I couldn't even read the slides from here. So, and third comment is transportation. I think we'll have trouble encouraging people to go there. It's easier to do an after-school activity at your own school, or just, you know, play with friends. There's no site that would be within walking distance of everybody. So maybe if you would arrange a van or bus to pick kids up at the elementary schools, take them there. There are after-school activities and sports at the schools, but if some of the students went to a central location, you could give them more variety of activities. And it'd be really nice for parents to drop their kids off in the morning at school, pick them up from here later in the afternoon. Also, if there are more kids at this center, then you could arrange for them to stay long and still have chaperones. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you said there's gonna be a full kitchen. Will you be hiring a cook and serving lunch?
Not right now, but we do know of other centers who do have a chef, so that could be something that we explore in the future, but certainly there is a plan to offer some more meals on a daily basis and have more opportunities for hands-on cooking classes and things like that, so.
Also, what's gonna happen to the Pleasant Street Center?
The select board has discussed that, right, a little bit? And Matt's.
Yeah, and we're looking into that, so there could be a lot of different uses for that. It could be outright sold, and we are working on a commercial appraisal right now that we'll have in time for town meeting to tell us the price of that. But if we were to able to keep it as a use, either a town use or to rent out to a nonprofit or a for-profit, pretty much everything is on the table. Even some residential, but the zoning there is a little bit sticky on residential. So we've looked at a few different options. We've looked at other places that had old firehouses that converted into theaters and art centers. I think that would be a great use for it down there. So, and we want to make sure it's revenue generating because obviously we've heard there's a big price tag here. And if we can sort of mitigate that by bringing in either rent or money proceeds from a sale, we want to do that. So, but that's a great question, something we're looking into.
And there's time, right?
And
Because,
oh yeah, and there's plenty.
you know, the earliest that the new facility would be open would be about 2.5 years. So there's time to, you know, figure out those details.
Any other questions?
Can I ask Joel a quick question? Sorry, coming from up
You're a
here.
resident.
Put you on the spot. Could you maybe talk for a couple of minutes about the whole Center for Active Living concept and how it's working in some locations? Because you folks have built a number of these facilities or designed a number of these facilities.
And well, Jenna said the purpose of it, but a lot of communities have gone in this direction. And sort of the fundamental way they've done it is, you know, it's that sentence that everybody knows, good fences make good neighbors. So there's an operational plan that controls how the different spaces are used. So and it's been an evolutionary process. It's interesting. Pat Tompkins from the Permanent Building Committee was the contractor and we were the architects for the first Center for Active Living. And in that particular project, the seniors did not want any dedicated space. They wanted they were in a remote site. They were tired of being off on their own and not being in a community. And I think that they learned and everybody else learned from that you do need some dedicated senior zone for it. So since they've been in that building now 8 years, they've created some core spaces that are for them, core spaces for youth. And that model has really sort of percolated. Pembroke is very much like this. You go in the front door, you're in a lobby, and there's a senior center lounge dedicated space. And you go further into the space, there's the gym. That's the shared resource. So it becomes a very organic process how these things get evolved and used. I don't think you can figure out. It's even the question about the chef. Not all that gets figured out in the beginning. Andover has a chef, and now Edgartown has a chef. Edgartown's a tiny senior center, but there's a demand and there's a person that can provide that service. So it happens organically out of the building. So as much as you want to plan all this, once you build it, you'll see how people use it. You'll see how it changes over time. And you'll see how the next generation wants to use it differently than we think it should be used today. The good fences, good neighbors. Reading has an entry on the back side of it so that at night, the kids can come in or the adult youth league, the adult basketball league can come in and use the building and not have to go even into the main lobby of the building. That's something that we learned out of the Sandwich project. There's 2 entries. There's the daytime entry and there's the nighttime entry. And that works extremely well because the seniors don't have to worry about people coming in and using their art projects, using their other resources, messing up what programs are in their space, going into the offices. It's completely secure, but you can get into the multi-purpose room, you can get into the gym, and you can get into the wonderful walking track that people from all over Cape Cod go to either Pembroke or Sandwich to walk on these winters like we had this winter with the ice and rain. So I'd say that the best thing that we learned and that's used is sort of to accommodate these entries so that the senior dedicated spaces aren't infringed upon when you have these other groups coming after school or in the evening. And just be aware of things change and the operational plan will develop as we get used to how the building gets used and the different programs. It's a very organic process. And I think, you know, you have to be willing to accommodate the change and the things that come through. But I'm sure that once this is up with the size community you have here, I would bet you'll have a chef in the community center in, you know, a short number of years' time as this develops. So it's all designed for that to happen, should that want to happen. And
Yeah, and in Andover right now, the director over there, they have a property tax worker program that we also have, but they don't have limits. So they have over 100 property tax workers, and a majority of them are working in the kitchen. So that's why they can have all of their CAF and they have their chef and their nutritionist, but majority of the folks preparing the food inside the kitchen are property tax workers. So that's also something that we can explore as the time goes on.
Any further questions? Okay, Kendra?
Yeah, I just had one, because you're talking about the different construction. Problem that we've had in Reading for years, I've been here since 1983. But I followed the school projects, and prior, there were problems with the materials used, the adhesives used. And I'm saying when you look at the materials, I'd say indoor air quality is something that I'm really concerned with. Like they talked about the development of, you know, materials like Martha. I've sort of thought you might be moving into that thing. But with the schools and the Wood End School, and we really worked hard to make sure that it had a peaked roof. And yet there was no passive air in this area, so that when they did open it up, it was like deadly hot in there, and the fire department had to bring in fans. I'm just saying that in the design component, sometimes when you're looking at one area, you forget this, you know, Birch Meadow. And there is a website that I realize it's still online. It's called IRR.org, IROR. That includes information that was for the residents of Reading, which came out then in like late 1990s into 2000. And they talk about school projects. And so it's, you can see what the school building committee, because the building committee you're on now is a town one. It used to be by each project. And I videotaped those. So that's, we got them on cable. So that's how I picked up a lot of information, but I have a lot of other things just.
so on the ventilation point, that's a good point. The building's designed to be airtight so that you're not wasting energy coming in that's uncontrolled. But you do want ventilation. So there are these rooftop ventilators that are called energy recovery units. As you exhaust the air that you want to get rid of from the building, it passes over the incoming air that's fresh air that's provided for the users. And the energy from the exhaust air, whether it's air conditioned air in the summer or heated air in the winter, gets transferred to the air that's coming in. So it's an extremely efficient, if, you know, right, when you have cold water next to hot water, they tend to merge to a middle point. And that's the same idea with the energy recovery. Instead of just throwing all that air out when you ventilate your building, you capture the heat first, or the cold in the summer, and you transfer that to the air that you need to bring in to have fresh air in that big multi-purpose room that has 150 people for lunch. So it's an extremely efficient building. That's about 50% efficient in terms of heat recovery.
I think that gets into, so like with Parker School, they built that. They had a lot of new electronic devices, for ventilation things, and people didn't understand how to use it.
Yeah, that's an issue.
And that's why I'm thinking, is there anyone who's custodian, who's, you know, on the committees, because we realized that was so important to be able to maintain the buildings. And they started not using it, or like Parker, they had, some of it was tile and some of it was carpeting, and then they grew mold. I mean, it's just because of the different approaches.
Joe Higgins has been a part of all the design meetings and
He's a member of the permanent
Yeah.
building committee. He's our facility
Joe Huggins, yeah.
department head. Yeah.
And Kevin Capuzzi also. So they're very focused on that. And I just wanted to answer the other part of your question, maybe kind of use that as a kind of closing comment. The permanent building committee does have its standing members. And there is a specific aspect for the school, which has members appointed through the schools. And there's a specific one for this project for ReCal. And Nancy Zimlak and I actually are the temporary members that are representing the specific interests of ReCal with the rest of the permanent building committee. We have our own meetings, all that dedicated to this project, dedicated to the activities. Joe is there, Kevin is there, regularly, and they are fully familiar with what's being discussed in terms of systems. We've also talked about technology as another thing that you get this brand new building with all sorts of wonderful technology and nobody knows how to make it work, or when it doesn't work, what do you do? They've been very engaged in that already to make sure that that is part of the process, including thinking about training folks too, to make sure that we'll know how to use it and we'll know how to use it well.
And I would just add, like, as project managers, our role is to work with communities from the very beginning to the very end of the project. So we're involved when the towns or the cities are taking over their project, even a year or two after the projects have opened. So we work to help bring the necessary information to the town, to the city, so that they're aware of those things. And all those things you're mentioning are very good. In terms of air quality, things have definitely changed since those previous projects were constructed. So off-gassing of materials is something that's looked at quite commonly. And many of the projects have materials that avoid that. And there's also accommodations that can be made during the construction phase to allow for a period of time so that doesn't affect the occupants once the building is open.
I will say on the website, there's a testimonial that Jenna got from different centers for active living to give you a firsthand impression of how they use the building and what they find is advantageous of this sort of mixed use type of facility. It's worth checking out.
Okay, thank everybody for coming this morning and spending your morning with us. We still have coffee, pastries, please help yourself. And if there's any other questions, some of us will be around in the room, but also email us, suggestion boxes. There's a lot of ways to contact us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
And I'm here with my colleague.
Hello, I'm Eric Bergstrom. I'm the chair of the Reading Republican Town Committee.
This year, the two town committees have come together to co-host this year's school committee forum. Our thanks to all candidates for joining us this evening.
We also